Hey, online radio listeners, help keep internet radio free and its advertising relevant to you. Simply open your radio player and click on the survey banner now and take a quick questionnaire about the advertising you hear on your favorite online stations. It only takes about 1 minute to complete and submit your opinions. Your answers will detail the advertising you've heard recently across different radio stations. So make your voice heard. Open your radio player, click on the survey banner to participate now. Thank you for listening and for your participation.
Because we don't understand how life formed, it is difficult to estimate this probability. The likelihood of a complex molecule like DNA being created by random collisions of atoms in a primordial ocean is fantastically small. In an infinite universe, it would happen in some places, but they would be very far apart. If we want to find advanced intelligent life, our best bet is to listen for radio signals.
Look up to the stars and the forests that surround. Do you see them? Do you hear them? Are they there? SpacedOutRadio.com presents S4 with Forest Moon Paranormal's Eric Cooper and friends. Also, take the time to join the Forest Moon Paranormal Facebook group.
I knew I should have made a left turn in Albuquerque.
Aliens, Bigfoot, conspiracy, Area 51, Dogman, ghosts, cover-ups, UFOs. The hidden will reveal itself.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go live on S4 with Eric Cooper.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to S4 with Eric Cooper, broadcasting live from the beautiful mountains of Concrete, Washington. And now, without further ado, here is your host, Forest Moon Paranormal's own, Mr. Eric Cooper.
Hey, evening, S4ians. Good to have you all here on board. Tonight we have an exciting show with Butch Witkowski talking all things cryptid and maybe some UFO. We'll see about getting there. So we have snow on the foothills up here, so I think it's going to be a nasty winter, and it's getting cold. So I did a training show for everyone that was out of state that wanted to do the Forest Moon Paranormal's training. So there is a training show on S4 for everyone that wanted to listen to it and go through the slides. By all means, it's there. And without further ado, how's the panel doing tonight? We have Markham talking, the science side of it. We got R. Keith Andrews talking the alien race side of it. We got Corey and myself, and we got Butch Witkowski. How you doing, guys?
Not bad at all. Thanks again.
Outstanding. So we're going to get right into it. And as always, in the chat room, if you have a question, put it in caps so we can see it and pay attention to it. And so right off the top, I got a question for Butch. So in your years of research, because I know you've been in it for a little over 2 decades, and what is the newest and strangest cryptid that you've encountered in research?
The newest and strangest cryptid is our bipedal canine here in Pennsylvania, not to be confused with dogmen in western Pennsylvania. 2 different creatures. We got our first report in July of 2014, and it was a gentleman walking his dog, a retired Air Force pilot, retired airline pilot, walking his 2 dogs like he did pretty much every day up through a state game lands, and the dogs started going crazy and started pulling at their leashes, and they were pulling that hard they were digging holes in the ground trying to get away from him to get to something that was in the woods. He didn't see anything, and he kept pulling them back, and they kept going, and he was thinking, well, okay, so it's a skunk, might be a deer, could be anything running through there. And then what walks out of the woods in front of him and pays no attention to him nor the dogs is his description, 8 to 10 foot tall, wolf-like head, short ears, massive chest, muscular arms, thin-waisted, heavy-thighed, hands with claws, thin to the ankles, and then hocked legs like a dog, no tail. It paid no attention to him nor the dogs. I don't know about you guys, but if I got 2 dogs ripping and tearing at me, I'm heading for a tree. Mm-hmm. And walked across the path in front of him and walked into the other side. So he drugged the dogs back, put them in the truck, went back, called, got a hold of me. I had never taken a cryptid report in my life. That was my first one. So got all the information I could, and he said he's going to go back the next morning with a couple of his buddies with some high-powered rifles and see what that is. And I tried to talk him out of that, but that was not going to happen. So they went back the next morning, right to the spot where the dogs dug the holes, and they walked into the right-hand side of off that trail, and they found nothing. No broken branches. There was no evidence of anything. And then he went to the other side where it walked into the woods. They got in about 25 or 30 yards, and then they all stopped, and they all had the same feeling like, it's time to leave. We need to get out of here, or something really, really bad is going to happen. And they backed all the way out with their guns facing behind them, all the way to the truck, and he said he will never go back again. End of story, and that's the last I heard from him. About a month later, we got a call from 2 musicians coming home from work, and on Route 22 in Blair County, and it's a very long, Route 22 it's like a real long straightaway, and then it steadily goes uphill. But as they rounded the only corner on that road, he saw what he thought was something chewing on a deer alongside of the side of the road near the guardrails. As his headlights hit about a quarter of a mile off, it stood up. Same description right down to the T. And as they got closer, this thing stood up, and they really got a good look at it. And as they went around it, it kept its eyes on it. It kept its eyes on him. They were watching it. It was watching them. Now they had a good look at the face, which the other guy did not. He only had a side view. And he said glowing yellow eyes. And, when I did get to talk to that gentleman, he says, and I'm not going to use the expletives he used, but he said, I don't care what you say or what you think. I'm going to tell you what I saw. And what I saw was a blankety-blank werewolf. End of story. Done. Now, we did get to talk to those guys. And since that time, since those first 2 reports, we've had a couple expeditions up in the area, which had their own strange effects. But every witness described exactly the same creature. Now, the difference between... So the difference...
Go ahead.
The difference between a dogman report and a bipedal report is dogmen are only seen or reported in far western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio. and Michigan and, all through the Blair, all that stuff out there. But they described a dog man as on all fours, dog-like looking face, mostly German Shepherd looking, long bushy tails, multicolored fur. This one is only described by all witnesses of all 26 cases as being dark, very dark brown or black short hair. Always seen on 4 foot or 2 foot. Our guy is never seen on all fours, has always been seen bipedal. And as the cases went on, the cases got stranger, where we have a lady who actually hunts me down. I'm out in Farmington, Pennsylvania, which is way out in Pennsylvania woods, at a conference, a Bigfoot conference actually. And her husband walks up, I didn't know it was her husband. This guy walks up and he says, "Are you Butch, the guy that's looking for this big wolf?" And I went, "Yeah, well, why?" And he said, "My wife needs to talk to you." I said, "Okay." So they meet over at our truck, and she watched it for over 10 minutes. And she described exactly the same creature, exactly the same size, height, weight. I mean, everything was identical. And they have a pond outside their home, and we've been to that location. And it was a very bright moon, one of the brightest we had in 2015. And she said it stood there for 10 minutes staring into the pond. It didn't do anything. It didn't go anywhere. It just stood there and stayed. And she just had come outside because it was bright moon, and she wanted to see what it was nice out. It was very bright in the summertime. And it never looked at her. She kept staring at it. And then she started to get this bad feeling that if she kept staying or standing out there on the porch, something really bad was going to happen to her too. So she went in, got the old man out of bed. He breaks for a gun, heads outside. It's gone. But the only thing I can think of why it was staring into that pond, and it is a very shallow pond. It's not very deep, about 3 foot, I would imagine, in its deepest spot. It's very still water. And on a moonlit night, it probably acted as a mirror. And maybe this creature had never seen himself before. And we've been in contact. Yeah, and we've been in contact with the indigenous in Oklahoma. At first, the first thing that came to my mind was it could be a skinwalker, or it could be a myriad of things. But when I started doing background research, I found a clipping in a newspaper from Erie, Pennsylvania, and from the mid-1800s, and it's just a small clipping. And how it started in this little clipping says, strange creature seen on farm, and it describes the creature identical to what we're looking for. This is in 1860. Now,
you've been around a long time then.
People say, "What do I think it is?" Well, my thought is it's a relic. It's been here for a long time. What it is, we don't know. Like I said, we have 26 reports. And another thing, this thing is never, ever seen like your dogmen. They're seen going through garbage dumps, garbage cans, running along railroad tracks, down the local mall parking lot, stuff like that. This thing has never been reported nor seen outside of a state game land. The last report we got, which is interesting because we never had this happen, where a gentleman who works for the DCNR here, so he's a ranger, and a friend of his went to look at a new walking path in one of the state game lands that I believe he said at one time was a railroad track, and they're converting it now to a walking path. So him and his buddy drive up, and they get out, and they start walking up the path, all they did was clear it out and clear the brush out and put down nice stone and stuff. But he heard something walking in the woods parallel to them on their right-hand side. So, being a ranger, he was armed. He had a .40 caliber Glock. So he thought, well, could be a bear, most likely it's a deer. They'd stop, it would stop. They'd walk, it would walk. So he wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to it. So they get to the end, because this thing isn't really finished yet. So it's only really about a quarter mile long. It's supposed to be 2 miles long, but right now it's only a quarter mile finished. So he said, so we stopped. We looked around a little bit. He said, I didn't see anything. He said, then we turned and started head back to the truck, to the parking area. And again, this thing is on the right side now while they're walking back, following them. They stop, it stops. So they pick up their pace a little bit, not much, but a little, and it picks up pace. So he stops. He turns around, looks backwards, and there it stands in the middle of the trail. and the description is identical to every other description we got. Now, the scary part is they now really step up their pace to get back to the truck. And as they get into the clearing where there's a parking area and walking toward the truck, there it is on the hill, standing above the tree line, at the tree line, looking down on them and the truck. And again, the glowing yellow eyes. Every report, we have glowing yellow eyes. No other color, always glowing yellow. And
I've got a question. I've got a question coming from Don. Is it like a werewolf?
Well, a werewolf really is a lichen, a manifestation of a human turning into a wolf. And those stories go back, to Roman times. In France, in the 1600s, I mean, everything was being blamed on werewolves. And, they burned 30,000 people at the stake in 1 year. So, although the werewolf is very prevalent in Eastern and Western Europe, it was not prevalent in this country. And even though a lot of those people moved here, and it's very possible some of those stories came, when we really did the background research over a period of the last 2 years where we really dug, we did find some reports in the 90s. We found some reports in the 80s, 60s, some in the 40s. Mostly unknown bipedal creatures, large wolves that were seen on properties, mostly farm areas. And you got to remember that in the state of Pennsylvania, we had no white men here until, 1754. This was all Indian territory. This is covered everywhere around here, burial grounds. And so could it be a watcher? Could it be a protector? Could it be a skinwalker? Yeah, it could be. And we kind of found out how strange that could be when we did our very first expedition to where we had those two reports 10 miles apart up in north central Pennsylvania. And there we are in the middle of 6,800 acres of heavy woodland, very heavy woodland, largest deer herds in Pennsylvania, all kind of animals. You name the animal, we got it up there. Coy wolves, coyotes, everything that flies or crawls lives in those woods. In that weekend, which was a hunter's moon, we heard zero, nothing, not a sound, no bird, no scratching, no deer, no nothing. Total silence for that weekend. Our recorders picked up nothing. Our searches on trails and stuff with FLIR cameras and FLIR devices, the only thing we found was a squirrel's nest with 2 baby squirrels. The wind would change from north to after a week because we always set up a weather station. We use the same weather station NOAA uses, and very precise, resets itself every 2 seconds. And the wind would change from north to south, and then it would change to east to west, which didn't really strike me until I got home and called up to Penn State University to the weather station there for NOAA and asked him about it. He said, there's a thermal. The thermals are doing that. He said, but for that to happen in the state of Pennsylvania, he says, it's kind of rare. He said, you'd really have to be on a place like Mount Everest for that to take place. Another thing that went strange was we couldn't keep a fire burning at night. We could keep a roaring fire all day long, but as soon as it got dark, the fire would go out.
Now, switching up a little bit, and probably not really, but the Beast of Gavaudan, are you familiar with that one? It happened in France.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a werewolf?
That was allegedly a werewolf, yes.
Okay.
Isn't that the one where they set some poor doofus up, the church trying to get people to flock in? They set this guy up as a werewolf and then kind of double-crossed him. And
yeah, well, here's what when I was doing research, one of the things I found out was the church played the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church played a big part of your werewolf stuff happening in that time period of the 13th, 14th, 15th century. And what they would do was, England was basically not any big city, but a bunch of small hamlets all over the place. So for the churches to get bigger, they needed more members. So what they would do is that they hire a murderer, a flat-out murderer, and tell him to go in and butcher 1 or 2 or 3 people, men, women, children, but rip them up, really tear them up. And then, of course, the local priest or minister would pop in and say they'd be complaining about this. And he'd say, well, look, if you come into the church, into our fold, we'll send our troops out to take care of this. So, of course, everybody joined the church. And then, voila, they'd send a bunch of the church soldiers out, which they all had at that time. And of course, they knew who they were looking for. So they'd find him, kill him, bury the body, and they'd bring back some wolf guts and hair and maybe a partial skin of a wolf and say, okay, we got him. He's dead. It's all over. Well, the Protestants caught track of this, so they started doing it. So this rash of these werewolves being captured, burned, where all they were doing was, they were just filling the coffers of the churches and killing off a lot of murderers at the same time, which they would have done in the meantime anyway. But it's fascinating how long and how far back werewolf stories go. I mean, they just go back, way back. When we were...
Yeah. And
did that migrate out of Russia?
Actually, no.
Because Russians had those huge, they had these gigantic steppe wolves, or gray wolves on the steppes that were capable of bringing down a human being.
Oh yeah.
Which, contrary to urban myth, North American gray wolves, they'd take a bunch of them to bring a human down.
Yeah.
It would take a bunch of them to even try, and they'd have to be desperate. But the Russian ones were huge and were not opposed to munching on people.
No, and that's true. But, you have, just like right now, Pennsylvania's been inundated with coy wolves. And that's a gray wolf and a coyote mix. And when we were at the first expedition, the park ranger warned us. He said about, having these strange coyotes around, and he started showing me pictures off his cell phone. And I looked at it and went like, that's not a coyote, those are coy wolves. And he showed me a pack of 8 and a pack of 10. He said, when we see them, we shoot them, because there's a Boy Scout camp real close, and they didn't want those, anything happening there. And I said, you do realize how they have a wolf mentality. You may face off 1 or 2 in front of you, but there may be 6 or 8 behind you. And I said, you're not going to fend off 10 coy wolves. And if you do, you're going to be ripped up pretty good.
Right. But, Now, Joe's got a question. Can we assume the dog man is dangerous, so should we protect ourselves?
Well, first of all, I got to say this. These things have been, we have reports, 4 reports where these things were accosted or, run into with men with guns, hunters. And in every case, whoever had the gun had that thought process in his head to not shoot, just walk away. And the one guy was within yards. He had a 12-gauge Magnum, and he had the gun in his hand. He was looking at it right in the eyes. It was looking at him, and he just said, I couldn't shoot. I don't know why. He said, I don't know why I couldn't shoot. He said, but I didn't. I just backed out. It kept its eyes on me. He said, I put the gun in the truck. I got in the truck and drove off. And he said, as I drove off, it just kept watching me. So we don't know what that is, but every time it's been encountered with somebody with a weapon, it has basically turned off their thought process of some type. That's the only thing we can come up with. Now, people always ask.
And that's kind of like Bigfoot as well in some cases, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the thing,
what gets me about one of the things that gets me about this is we have a Native American record that jives pretty well with Bigfoot. We've got descriptions, but aside from skinwalkers and the Shunkawarrican, the Native Americans don't seem to have interacted with these things much.
No,
I don't see too much about, even in the Cherokee myth, there's very little about anything like that.
Yeah. Well, we were in touch with the Cherokee out in Oklahoma when this first started because, I didn't know anything what I was looking for, so Skinwalker popped into my head. And I got to talk to the chief and the medicine man, and they had no time that they mentioned the word Skinwalker or anything else, no Leoshi or anything. but they did tell me pages and pages of stuff. They did send me some protection to wear that would, if I would encounter it, it would mark me as a warrior of that wolf tribe. They really believe that I'm dealing with a skinwalker that is maybe a protector of that particular south central Pennsylvania area, which was where the largest Susquehannock Indian tribe was, and they were a very warring people. And we had Iroquois, we had Delaware. We had so many tribes here in Pennsylvania, but the Susquehannock were the strongest and the biggest, and they made the rules. And like I said, we have burial grounds everywhere. And then, of course, when the English came, and when the white man came, then there were more burial grounds because, then we had the Indian Wars going on. But one of the things that people always say, do you protect yourself? And I always say, look at it this way. I'm only out there to prove that there's something there. And the only way I can prove that is going to be on a FLIR. Nothing hides from a FLIR. And no. We have other cameras. We have infrared. I got a truck in my driveway right now that has everything from satellite communications to every type of camera you can think of, and all the gear to go with it. And we also have in those trucks, we have 2 of those, and also in those trucks are non-lethal weapons. The same non-lethal weapons police use for riot control. So we can shoot a hard rubber round, 68 caliber, at 450 foot per second. We also have gas. It's a lava gas. So I'm not out hunting this thing to kill it. I'm out to find out and prove if it's there. Mm-hmm. So we take precautions. Like I said, all our stuff is non-lethal. One of those guns will take down, turn a bear around and send him in the wrong direction. So We're not worried about but if we do encounter it and things get ugly, at least we have something, hopefully, that will turn it around or scare it. But then again, we could raise our weapons and have the same thoughts that everybody else has had, where don't shoot. But
right.
We got FLIR cameras running everywhere.
Good. So BTO's got a question for you. Are these cryptids natural, hybridized, or ET related to the left ear?
What was that again?
These cryptids are they natural, hybridized, or is it ET related that got left ear?
I would say that I wouldn't say that they're ET related, but they are definitely not of this time. And it's very hard to explain that because you have the connotation of skinwalker, and a skinwalker can be anything it wants to be. Do I feel our first expedition where all that weird stuff was happening to us happened because there was something watching us or there was something there? Yes, I do. I really do. Now, I'm sure it was not those 2 little baby squirrels that we saw in the infrared or on the FLIR, but the only other living creature we saw was we moved a rock to put a table up, and a little salamander about 3 inches long crawled out from the rock and ran into the woods. That's the only living thing we saw. Now, the place is full of bear and deer and coy wolves and coyotes. A full moon, we should have had coyotes screaming at the top of their lungs. I live in the country. I live in Amish country in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And when I came home, or very early on a Monday morning, about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I parked the truck and I was getting a few things out, I could hear the coyotes howling in the field. Mm-hmm. And I didn't hear that where I should have. And when animals get quiet in a field, and any hunter will tell you this, when animals get quiet and you don't hear anything, there's a predator around. And a predator this size would be, I'm going to say, I may have to take clean shorts when I go if I ever see it.
Now,
so just to clarify, the difference between a dogman and this new dog creature is basically one's bipedal and the other's on 4 legs, correct?
Yeah, the one's a quadruped, the one's bipedal.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's the difference. Plus, also the dog men are much smaller. The largest report height-wise that I seen on one that was standing up was like about 5 foot, 6 foot. Now, I don't live very far from a real wolf sanctuary here. As a matter of fact, it's only about 20 miles from my house, where they take in injured wolves or wolves that, were captured and they can't turn loose for whatever reason. They're pregnant or they're wounded, and they take care of them. They have about 25 or 30 of them up there. Now, I went up and stood at the fence while the owner of that sanctuary was feeding one chunks of watermelon. I'm 6'1". He was on his hind legs. Now, a wolf can't stand on his hind legs very long. You'll hear them start to pop. Their hips start to pop, and they'll drop down. But they stay up long enough to get that watermelon, okay? But I'm standing right there looking right at him. I'm looking down his throat. And his head is twice as big as mine, and he's about 5 or 6 inches taller than me. And he's just a gray wolf. Now, what's this thing look like that's 8 to 10 foot tall, and how big would his head be? So people say, well, what kind of evidence besides, if say I can't get a fleur on this thing? Okay, well, the next thing you're going to look for is footprints. Well, footprints don't cut it. Hair isn't going to cut it because you need DNA, and you need a donor for the DNA before you go do any DNA. But a chew mark. But if I get bones, a chew mark, I mean, I know what the width of a normal wolf jaw is, a large wolf. If I got something that's twice that, then I pretty much got something going there. But hopefully we'll get it on flare, either in because we have 2 cameras, 2 FLIR cameras that are set up. That we set up. They take one picture every second, and I can leave them set up for 30 days. So they're very wide angle. I can cover pretty much almost a quarter of a mile in width with those cameras, plus our handheld ones and stuff that we have. So really, that's the only thing I can do to prove it is get this thing in a FLIR.
Mm-hmm. So I want to go back to part of what BTO was asking on that question there. Some of it he said was he asked if there were ET left behinds, and now I have heard that chupacabra is an ET left behind. I don't think any of the other ones necessarily are, but the chupacabra is. And I think Keith, weren't you telling me something a little bit about that one time before?
You mean about the chupacabra?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, they are left behind. They're actually left behind by one of the reptilians' attacks. But what you're talking about, and I do agree with Butch here, that it's not an ET. It's an ancient race. In other words, it evolved here before man got here.
Yes, I agree. It's a relic. It's been here a long time.
Well, they all have. There's an entire race of the things, but they happen to be underground.
Mm-hmm.
Like they happen to be in what people are calling inner Earth.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that is kind of outstanding about this bipedal is that it's never been seen outside of that area. That we call it our lichen loop. That's our research area, and it's never outside that loop. Now, every report is in deep, dark forest with very little access, or state hunting grounds, or some kind of encampment, Boy Scout or hunter's camp or something like that. But they're always close to water, streams, ponds, creeks. They're always in the mountainous areas, the highest points. We were at the top of the mountain on our first and second deal. When the first report and the fifth report, I believe, where it was on flat ground, but it was just outside of the game land, where the one was chewing on a dead deer, and the other one was in a swampy area at the base of a mountain, but still in that deep, dark forest. They just don't leave that area. And
makes sense. That's their entrance.
What's that?
I said that makes sense. That's where the entrance is.
Yeah, look, Pennsylvania. People say where they hide. Well, look, Pennsylvania is full of caves. This was a coal mining state. I mean, we've got abandoned mines, we've got caves, we've got abandoned towns, buildings, factories all over this state. Old railroad depots that run through the middle of the state that have been closed down since the 1900s that are still there. I mean, this thing could hide anywhere it wants to hide. And the Cherokee warned me. They said that if I'm looking for it, it knows that I'm looking for it. It knows that we're looking for it. So he said your chances of it making itself visible to scare you off is pretty much guaranteed. I'm not too worried about being scared off. I mean, but as long as I can get that sucker on FLIR, video or still, that's what I need. And
now, do you leave game cams out?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, they're not. They're like a game cam, only it's actually a surveillance camera. They're about maybe a foot tall and 14 inches wide. They have a wide-angle lens. The battery packs last for actually 60 days. I can set it up to... they'll do infrared on their own. There's no noise. They're silent, totally silent. There's no flash. When nightfall comes, they switch to infrared automatically, and they take a picture every 1 second. So when I pull a SD card out and put it in the computer to look at them, what I'm looking at is a strip of 6 pictures, and those pictures are time-stamped and dated. So I can go from, 2 o'clock in 1 minute to 2 o'clock 1 minute, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. So a little tedious when you're looking at them, but it's the only thing I got going for me. I mean, first of all, I get people say, well, why don't you just bait him? Well, bait him with what? I'm going to... That always takes me back to the guys with the Bigfoot, nailing pork chops on trees and throwing out donuts and making bacon. No, that doesn't cut it. I mean, first of all,
that can bring in anything. That's going to bring in bears, coyotes, the normal animals.
Absolutely, and not only that, pork chops are expensive. I like pork chops. I'd rather eat them. So one of the things is that they'll say, I always ask them, I said, okay, so I got 6,800 acres in this one particular area, 6,800 acres of heavily forested woods that when you stand on the road and look into the woods, it's black. You need a flashlight in the daytime. I said, so where exactly in that 6,800 acres would you like me to place these pork chops? And then they think about it a minute. Like, oh, I guess that can't be done. I said, yes, you're right, it can't be done. And the thing, where it's been seen, it's been in a number of counties, but again, always in the deep, dark woods.
Now, are you? I assume you're familiar with the works of David Paulides' Missing 401.
Yes, well, absolutely. Yeah, I did.
Are any of these areas on his cluster maps?
Yes.
Is it possible that any of these cryptids are part of the problem with that?
Yes.
Okay. Because my theory with that, I know Paulides has his own theories, but I think it's a combination. It's not just one thing doing it. I believe it's government. I believe it's UFO. I believe Bigfoot. Some of the cryptids, maybe. I also believe in the portal theory that they're walking into a dimensional.
Well, look at the things that are going on in Chicago right now with these flying humanoids. I mean,
the Mothman appearing.
So they got 58, 59 reports now. Everybody's seeing the same thing. Could it be a portal? Sure. Could they be conjured up? Sure. That's where the investigator, the forensic investigators, what we like to do forensically. We don't like to go out and do that pork chop thing and all that stuff. I want to do it forensically. I have a background in police work, and that's what I did. And forensically is the way you do it. I mean, you look for everything, you look for the obvious, and you look for the stuff that's not so obvious. And then, you know, I said to a Bigfoot researcher one time, not to get off the subject, but I said to him one time, I said, if you're walking through the woods and I said you see an old bird's nest up in a tree and there's nothing in it, it's just an old bird's nest, would you take it for evidence? He looked at me like I was nuts. He said, why the hell would I do that, he says. I said, well, what's a bird's nest made out of? He said, straw, grass, hair. I just kept staring at him.
Mm-hmm. Evidence. You can analyze it.
He said, hair. I said, yeah, hair. So, I mean, when you think on a forensic end of it, it's just like paranormal. Now, I'm not a paranormal guy. I went out with a paranormal group a couple of years ago, and this all ties in together. Mm-hmm. And I went with a group. I never did any paranormal work in my life. I mean, I could trip over a ghost. I wouldn't know it. So I went with this group, and it kind of turned out to be a joke. We walked through this old building. Everybody's talking, flashing cameras and flashlights and making all kind of noise. And I'm thinking, hell, I could run through here with and this could be a dynamite factory. I could run through here with a tractor trailer and nobody'd make any difference. So then I got a hold of another group. They were incorporated back in 1979, incorporated in the state of Pennsylvania, not far from me, about 20 minutes away. And I looked them up and told them I was interested in tagging along sometime on an investigation to see what they do. I was interested. And I think everybody should understand how other people investigate. So we went. They were very methodical. They were very upfront with me. They were very empathetic with the clients. They had the best equipment. They did everything proper. I mean, if I was doing it, I probably would have done it exactly the same way. And I went on them with 2 deals, which I learned a lot about paranormal investigation from those folks. Mm-hmm. And the guy said that you have to look at everything, not just what's told to you. And I said, exactly. I said, if you just go by what's told to you, you could be running around in circles for years. And even in my mind, after being involved a little bit with those paranormal folks and cryptids now for, well, over 3 years now, and ufology for many, many, many years, I'm at the point now, and I know people will laugh when people say, oh, there's something wrong with you. I think my mind, my statement, I think they are all connected somehow. Now, how? I have no idea. But I truly believe that they're all connected somehow.
And I completely agree with you. That's why our team covers Bigfoot, cryptids, UFO, alien abduction, and the haunting side of it. Because to me, it's an umbrella. They're all paranormal. And that's how we take it. That's exactly how we approach every case.
And that's how you have to take it, because, I mean, look, you know, when somebody says to me that they're a Bigfoot expert or a UFO expert or a crypto expert,
right.
I that's exactly what I do. I laugh because I'm going to say, like, exactly what is a crypto or Bigfoot or UFO expert? Most of the guys are experts that have written all these books on ufology. I've never seen it.
And that's why we call, we use the term specialist, because a specialist specializes in a field but is always learning. An expert denotes that you already know everything, and no, there's no way you can know everything in an unstable, unpredictable field.
Mm-hmm.
So,
we don't have any reference in this field. We don't have like the complete encyclopedia of you name your phenomena. It's all speculation. It's all hearsay, and it's, for the most part, it's unsubstantiated myth. We tell the same stories we tell when we're talking about our ghost experiences or our cryptid experiences. If we were reading them in an ancient tablet, we'd say it was a myth.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just a modern day version.
Right. And one of the things I speak to a lot of groups. I've trained a number of groups over the years. And one of the things I always tell them, whatever I'm telling you now, You can put that all on your pieces of paper and look at them whenever, or call me if you need help with something. But there's one thing I want you to always remember. Out of everything I even talk about here tonight, there's one thing I even want your folks to remember. Always demand evidence and always think critically. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You keep those two things.
I don't agree with everything that Gould said, but the one where he said have an open mind but not so open your brain falls out was, that was, take that to heart. I mean, that's a good one.
I just saw on Don Goodwin, is it? Yeah, Don Goodwin said about a laser as an option. Don, you must be sneaking around in my truck because we have a laser out. We have a laser out there that I could light a cigar at 100 yards.
Wow.
I like that.
Now what?
That's the last.
Now what you do with the laser?
It's strictly for defensive.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's one stroke off of having to carry a license with it. It is it's a green laser. I forget how many NM it is, 750, 850, something like that. You have to wear glasses to use it, special glasses. And it has a lock and a key that you have to open and a guard that you have to unscrew before you can fire that laser. Now, in trouble, I could probably do that for a second.
so it's an actual burning laser then?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
okay. You see laser. I'm sitting here thinking of a scope or something. Gotcha.
It's. I mean, if worse comes to worse, and I have to stop something, that would be what I use, and that's on my belt right next to my holster. So I have a non-lethal and a lethal weapon at the same time, but I'd rather not use. I'd rather not use either one of them.
You kind of have to have it just in case.
Yeah.
So, folks, deer hunting season opened up. Monday, I will be going on the mountain. I'm taking a recorder and whatnot. We're going up into where I heard my book Bigfoot knocks here a couple of years ago. So we'll see if we get any Bigfoot activity while we're up there. Just wanted to throw that in. Yeah, I'm actually excited. I haven't gone hiking in a while, so I'm looking forward to getting up in the high country.
Well, best of luck on it.
Hope you're not too far out of shape.
Oh, no. I don't know. 20 years military, I don't really get out of shape. I'm always walking.
I hope you have my address to send steaks.
I'll get it. And I have my bear tag just in case too. I don't go hunting bear. I like bear, but if one comes across my path, I might want to try to put him in the freezer.
Yeah.
So on the topic, and we only have about 15 minutes for our first break, but on the topic of equipment, what kind of equipment do you take with you besides cameras? And I ask that because have you ever tried EMF meter, and has EMF ever picked up any cryptids?
Yeah, it has. That's kind of a little bit of a longer story, but remind me of that one right after the break. But yes, to tell you what we carry in the truck. To carry in the truck, it's a 2016 Ford Transit that you can walk around in the back standing upright. It's all shelved out, all professionally done. We have our own radio system, FM radio systems. We have monitors. We have weather monitors. We have police monitors. We have air monitors. That's all built just like in a police car between the two seats. There's also a computer Panasonic ToughPad that's mounted up on that stand between the seats. In the back of the truck, we have forensic equipment, evidence gathering equipment, stuff to take, dental stone to take casts. We have all Nikon cameras, all digital. We have a Canon CCTV camera, which is basically studio grade, very wide, long lens. That's good. I can shoot up to 3 miles with that straight ahead. We have laptops, all Panasonic laptops. There's 2 of those others in the truck. There are clothing, there's tents, there's tables, there's shelters, there's canopies. There are gear, the backpacks, axes, machetes. I mean, everything that you'd need out in the field. My trucks are set up that if I left right now and say I went to Virginia, which I didn't do too long ago, at 11 o'clock at night, all I had to do was grab my bag, my wallet, my cell phone. We have our own cell phone that's built into the truck, plus the cell phone I carry, so somebody can get a hold of me. I'm in the truck or out of it. We have GoPro cameras. We have 4 of those. One is actually mounted in the truck in the windshield, which sees everything ahead. We've got floodlights. We've got infrared. We've got thermal imaging devices, 4 of those. We have, we're right down to walking sticks. We have a trauma kit. We have oxygen. We have masks. If we go into a cave, we don't know if there's gas in there or not, so we have stuff to take care of that. We have rappelling equipment. We have pretty much anything that if you called me now and said, I need to be out in Bellingham, Washington, or out in that area, besides the driving time, when I got there, the only thing I'd probably need would be a cup of coffee and a sandwich. I have everything with me.
Oh, we've got that here at headquarters.
and the unit itself, with the truck and all the equipment, we have our communications are satellite. We have sat phones. We have portable radios. We have our own frequencies. We have our own 4-station frequencies, and they're lockout channels. So if somebody try to listen on us, all they're going to get is garbled garbage. Everything we have is military grade or police grade. Our binoculars are all Steiner binoculars. So we're just loaded for bear. And when you think about it, my wife reminds me of it constantly. With the equipment and the cost of the vehicle and everything else that's been done to the vehicle inside and outside, I'm probably looking at about $140,000.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that may be that sounds to me like the link. If you're catching EMF with cryptid, that's the biggest tool that Forest Moon uses. Is as far as technology, we use our EMF meter. We got the Astral team, and we have a medium on the team. We use our Astral team and an EMF meter. That's really all we need to verify if something's in the location or not. But being as you have EMF that's picked up with ghost spirits, haven't tried with UFOs. I'm pretty sure you'd still get a reading, but that seems to be the tie-in.
Yeah, you should if you would have a landing area or a piece of evidence on the ground or something like that, or even a visitation. There should be residue. There should be an EMF change. The story I'm going to tell you after the break is kind of weird because it's still going on, and nobody has an answer for this one. I've talked to every researcher I can think of, and nobody can come up with anything on it. But it's still happening, and it's not far from my home, as a matter of fact. And it started out as a UFO report. But getting back to the equipment, I always thought, even when I was working in the police department, we had equipment in the truck. In the cars. We had, from first aid equipment to, rifles, shotgun, extra radios, and searchy evidence kits, which are very expensive. But even when I was picking out the first kit for the first truck, and this is our 5th truck, because we upgrade every 2 years, this one, even that very first kit I bought was a searchy kit, because I figured, hey, I know how to use it. I've used it. We have cadaver bags. We have 2 of those. We have refrigerated units. We have generators. We have heaters. And like I said, I can just step out of the house with my normal things like my cell phone and my wallet and my keys, and I can jump in the truck. And there's extra clothing in there for summer, winter. I can go from here to wherever I need to go and not stop anywhere along the line to buy anything because I have it all. The only thing that I do have is a cooler in there, which I will make a stop and load up with some goodies to eat. That's about it.
You need a fridge.
We have the one we have is works off our generator, so it gets us where we want to go. It does what we need it to do. It's a research station on four wheels. I mean, we have a microscope in there. We have everything to take any kind of evidence and keep it. Even if it's a body part or a piece of a body part, I have the wherewithal to keep that on dry ice in a container till I get home. Take it down to the lab. But everything we have is, like I said, military grade. But you got to realize, I've been putting this stuff together for 28 years, I guess. And even when I upgraded, I always got rid of the old stuff and got the best and the newest that I could get. And we've helped other groups. We've been called out by other groups to help. They may not have the equipment, or maybe they don't have the or the type of equipment that they need for a certain investigation, and we'll help them out. I mean, I've never refused anybody. Inside the state, we don't charge for anything. But if somebody wants me to come, down to Florida, hey, at least pay for the gas. I'll take care of everything else. Just pay for the gas. I'll take care of everything else.
So Perrier wants to know, does your truck float?
Oh, I wish it did. One of our now our other truck has scuba. Our other truck has scuba gear in it and a raft, only because that gentleman is a rescue diver, and he's a police officer. But other equipment, as far as that truck and this truck, the equipment's pretty much the same. Only he does carry scuba gear and dive gear, and he does have an inflatable rubber boat.
Well, that probably comes in handy if you do get a case that's got a lake or something of that nature. You want a scuba diver to be able to go look for evidence.
Yeah, or a flooded mine.
Right. And we got 7 minutes for first break. And I don't want to have anything to go into. 3? Okay, there's the man. And real quick, where can folks find you?
They can find us on Facebook. They can find us on Facebook. It would be UFORCOP, UFORCOP, or www.uforcop.com, which is our website. Or on Facebook, I have another page, which is Pennsylvania Research Center, Pennsylvania. On the website, if they want to contact me, they just go down to where it says terrestrial contact, and there's a little form there to fill out, just a name, what you need, and a callback number or an email address, and I'll get back to you. I usually respond in less than 12 hours because I have one computer here set up that's all it does is monitor that. So, it's pretty easy to get a hold of me.
Okay.
And if if I'm out in the field, everything gets transferred to that computer that's in the truck between me and the passenger, and my cell phone is also there.
Good. And I know Markham's probably jumping up and down because Markham's here in science. Is Markham with us?
You know me too well.
He's got a rolling lab.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll have one soon.
Indeed.
I got a kidney up on eBay, and I left. Well, we can't say that on air. I'm auctioning off body parts so we can have ours.
And folks, the opinions and views of S4 do not reflect that of Space Scout Radio or KTLK-FM, The Fringe, which we are a part of. And on that note, I believe it's time for break. Is it not, Corey?
Yeah, we're right up on a break, so we'll go ahead and take one now. When we come back, definitely want to continue in there and get Butch's talk in on the EMF that he has encountered and how that works. So when we come back from break, we will continue our discussion on cryptids tonight. Our special guest is Butch Witkowski of the UFORCOP. along with our Keith Andrews of the ET Connection, Eric Markham, our Forest Moon Paranormal resident scientist, myself, Corey Reese, and your host, Mr. Eric Cooper. Join us every Saturday night at midnight. You can find us on Spreaker.com, SpacedOutRadio.com, and now on KTLK The Fringe FM. Check out Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott 5 nights a week at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and Spaced Out Weekend with Dave Cruz Saturdays and Elizabeth Anglin on Sundays. Also check out KTLK with shows like Lighting the Void with Joe Roop and a plethora of other really good shows. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed on tonight's show by tonight's hosts and guests are not necessarily those of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays, Spaced Out Sundays, or SpacedOutRadio.com. Listener discretion is advised. And now back for hour number 2, we have Corey Ruiz, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal, and S4. You can find Forest Moon Paranormal on Facebook. And for more information on S4, visit SpacedOutRadio.com. And now, here's Eric Cooper and Corey Ruiz.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and for those of you that are just joining us, tonight we are talking all things cryptid. Tonight on our panel we have our Keith Andrews, Eric Markham, and our special panel guest, Butch Witkowski from the UFO Cop. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Good to be back.
Always a
Glad to be here.
So, again, the opinions and views of S4 do not reflect that of Spaced Out Radio or KTLK, the Fringe FM, which we are a part of. And getting right back into it, so you had an EMF story, and that intrigues me because, I mean, like I said, in Forest Moon, that's our biggest piece of technology because we're in it for the emergency response side of it, and for the client as well as the spirit or whatever else we're dealing with. So when we can verify activity with EMF, which correlates with the astral team and our medium, it's a perfect. What's the word I'm looking for? It's the perfect example of validation and clearing. So I'm interested in hearing your story about EMF readings with cryptids.
Okay, so a little over a year ago, I got a call through the website. A gentleman wanted me to call him right away regarding a UFO sighting, and he gave the location, which is approximately 8 miles from my home. And I said, okay. So I called him on the phone, and he said, it's going on right now. And I said, I'm on my way. This is midnight. Now, it was snowing, and more excitement than brains most of the time. I'm wearing slippers, a T-shirt. I grabbed a jacket, unfortunately a light jacket, and I took off. And I got down to the farm, and I pulled in. He's standing out there with binoculars, and he's looking up, and I look up, and I'm seeing exactly what he's saying. He's seeing, which is 3 orbs coming over the mountain and followed by what looks like to be a helicopter. And the helicopter goes so far, then it turns around, and these things basically shoot straight up. So we're standing there. It's now getting close to 1 o'clock, and here come another 3, but no helicopter. And they continue on straight across the sky. Then nothing was happening for quite a while. So I said, okay, it was now getting on to 4 o'clock, and I was numb. So I said, I'll tell you what, anything else happens, you call me right away. I gave him my home phone number. He said he'd keep watching. And that was it. So a couple weeks went by, and it was right before Christmas. Matter of fact, it was the day before Christmas. And phone rings. It's 12:30 at night. I answer the phone. It's him. He says, I don't know if this has anything to do with it. He said, but I had family here tonight on the farm, just stopped in, say hello, Merry Christmas, all that stuff. And we were out back saying goodbye to each other, and there were shadows that almost looked like they were trying to surround us. And I went like, what? What do you mean? He said just like shapes that were trying to get around us. We all saw it. I said, keep everybody there. I'm on my way. Got down, talked to everybody. Everybody had the same story from the smallest one all the way up to the eldest. And they left, and I said, take me out back. Show me where you were standing. So we went out back, and we're looking around, and what immediately caught my eye was this farm is building a very large, I'm going to say chicken coop, but I'm sure there's another name for it, where they raise the embryos to chicks, and then they sell the chicks to farmers. So the building's got to be 300, 400 foot long, and it's under construction. The walls are up, the roof is on, but a couple windows, but there's open windows, no doors, and it's under construction. There's no cement floor or anything in yet. But when I'm looking around, I see at the roof line, on top of the roof, at the peak of the roof, to my right, a distortion. Something's there, but I can't make out what it is. And I think the only reason I'm seeing it is because, like, a mile beyond, looking in that direction, a mile straight ahead, there's a farm that has some pretty good sized lights out in the barnyard, all night lights. And it's kind of illuminating this distortion from the rear. So I walk back to the truck, I get a FLIR device, and I come out and I put the FLIR up, and I'm looking right at this thing, and it's a distortion, and that's the best way I can describe it, guys. It's a distortion. It has no shape. It looks to be maybe 4 foot tall, maybe 2 foot wide, but it's there, and it just had me. It had my total attention. And then the gentleman, I said to him, and I didn't tell him what I saw. I said, "Do you see anything out of the unusual or anything unusual right now?" And he's looking around, and pretty soon he focuses up on that end of the roof, and he says, "Yeah, there's something weird happening up there." He said, "I don't know what's going on." He said, looks like heat coming off of a hot highway, and that's pretty much what it was. It looked like to me too. So while he's looking at that, I'm looking around a little bit more, and I see another one. Now, this one is on the ground, but it's not on the ground. It's maybe 3 foot off the ground. I'm looking through a FLIR, and it's a little taller, maybe 5, 6 foot, and about the same width, but the same distortion, same type of distortion. So I said, "You see anything else?" Because I didn't want to put it in his head what I'm looking at. I want him to tell me what he sees, and he sees the same thing. And then I said, "Okay, look, I got to get some more people up here. We have something going on here that I need to really look into." So I got Lon Strickler from Phantoms and Monsters and his son to come up because he lives down in Hanover, PA. They met me. We drove down to the farm. It was still daylight, so we got in. We were talking to the folks and getting their take on what was going on. And we waited till dark, and when it got dark, we went out with FLIR device, and Lon walked up to the door where we saw the one off the ground, and I hit the temperature targeting on the FLIR, and I targeted the ground, and the ground was 55 degrees. I targeted Lon's back, and it was 68 degrees. I targeted the object to the right on the roof, which had now moved to the left a little bit, but was pretty much basically in the same area, and it was 25 degrees. I targeted the one that was on the ground, which wasn't on the ground anymore, which was now above the door on the roof, and it also was 25 degrees. Now, Lon said when he was walking up to the door, he heard what he considered to be chanting of some sort. And so we got away from that, and we've been watching it ever since. Now, that whole valley was Susquehannock Indian at one time, and they did dig up a lot of cornfield and put this huge mound of dirt off to the left of the barn, and I mean huge. It's a good 30 foot tall and maybe 60, 80 yards long of dirt. And I've been going down like every other week to see if they're still there. I mean, I have them. I got them on photograph and video. So I've been around the barn with a meter, and I got nothing. And then the one time I went down, and they weren't on the barn anymore. So I took the meter, and I started walking around the dirt. Well, as soon as I walked, I got within 10 foot of the dirt, the needle pinned. And I backed up, and the needle would relax. I'd move down walk toward it, the needle would pin again. So I was definitely getting extremely high readings off that dirt. So back to the truck, got the car, came back, and lo and behold, both entities' distortions were on top of the dirt mound. I went back a week later. The EMF read 0 at the dirt mound. Went back over to the barn. Now the barn was lit up, and they were back. They were more further to the left than they were before, almost double the distance. The larger of the two was to the right now, and the smaller of the two was to the left. But they're still there.
Your EMF readings there, Butch, do you happen to remember what they are? And I'll preface that as the reason why I say is that I have found that with my EMF reader, when I am detecting an entity of some type, I'm usually reading in the microtesla range, and I usually read somewhere between 100 and 150 when I run into an entity of sorts, and usually I'm running about normalization somewhere around 55. Do you remember what your readings were when you got those?
Not off the top of my head. All I know is that they were very high. They pinned the meter. I mean, there was no getting away from it. I mean, the needle went from 0 all the way over to the right, period. And, I mean, just looking at the scenario in total, I mean, it starts out, and then there's another part to this where there's across the road, from the farm there's a road, and across the road there's another field. And across that very, very large field there's another road, and then there's a hill. And in the middle of that hill there's a blue light that flashes on and off. I went over there in the daytime trying to locate that light. It's not there. When Lon was there with me, it's there. When I was there by myself and the owner, it's there. It's a very bright, brilliant blue light. It doesn't show a beam or anything. It just lights up, and it stays lit, and it might flutter a little bit, and then it dies out. And this whole case just baffles me because the part that is, I will get those readings to you because I have them written down in the truck. But one of the things that is very baffling was the day before, or the day we were to go to this farm, Lon, I, and his son, to do these readings and to take, show Lon the area and all that stuff. We had a very bad windstorm come through here. Now, even though I'm only 7-8 miles from that farm, we had very, very little damage here. Very. And when I say very little, I'm saying maybe a couple branches, small branches, and a bunch of leaves. Where that farm is, the property to the rear of that farm was decimated completely. The farm looking at the farm to the right of the farm, lost a roof and a barn and a silo. Wow. To the left, the property to the left is a tree farm. They lost 50 old-growth trees that were actually pulled out of the ground. Across the road to the next farm, which would be directly to the one to the left, it upset 2 grain tractor trailers, totally upset them on their side, and took down 2 concrete and 1 metal silo and tore a barn apart completely. This home that's on this farm that I'm investigating, it was built in 1868. He didn't lose a shingle. The first time I was there, I remember I had to walk around his truck parked. He parks it really close to his rear door because he's not a handicap, but he's an older fellow. And I had to walk through this pile of leaves that had accumulated. That pile of leaves was still there the next day when we got there after the windstorm. There was nothing damaged on the property. There was nothing upset on the property. There weren't any leaves on the property. No branches came down. No trees came upset. No barn or anything like that was damaged. And that pile of leaves is still there till this day.
No, I've got a question for you. You're in Pennsylvania. Have you ever investigated the Kecksburg UFO crash?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been there 3 times.
What's your opinion of that?
Well, depends who you talk to. If you talk to half the town,
well, yeah.
If half the town they say it happened. You talk to the other half of the town, they say it didn't happen. Some things that have stuck with me as I'm having my doubts was they said that the Civil Air Patrol youngsters were there doing crowd control, and the Civil Air Patrol members were carrying 45s on their hip. I was a member of the Civil Air Patrol. We never carried any guns. And then
and Civil Air Patrol is mostly kids, isn't it?
Yeah. From age you have to be 12 to 16.
Right.
So
right.
I doubt very much if that's factual, and why they would be doing crowd control is another thing. What's a 12 or 16-year-old going to? Checking with state police in the area, they pretty much knew nothing about that case at all. They heard about it, but they weren't involved in it. Where when you read the reports of it, the state police were in constant contact. They were the first on the scene, and you got the fire chief who says never happened, and you got the fire chief's brother who said it did happen. You got witnesses that said, well, the one guy started out, and what caught me right away was he starts out by saying, well, he heard it come over the radio while he was working on his Corvair changing antifreeze. Corvairs were air-cooled. They didn't have antifreeze.
Right.
Well, when he got challenged on that, well, then he changed it to a Chevelle. Then it went to a Camaro. And the other two witnesses, everything kept changing as time went on. And I just think, look, that town makes a lot of money on that Kecksburg Days they have every weekend, every year. I mean, it's kind of like the Mothman Festival. We just had one here locally, about 25, 30 miles from where I live, the Albadwitch Festival, which is supposed to be a miniature Bigfoot that throws apples at people.
I have a girl that I work with in X-ray who born, raised, grew up, raised her kids and everything, just recently left Point Pleasant. She says that whole Mothman thing was BS in order to get tourists in there because there's nothing. I mean, there's just literally nothing there.
He's right.
They used to have a dynamite factory or munitions factory, but once it, disappeared, there's nothing there.
Yeah. Oh, no, there's nothing. Now, when you go down to the festival, that little town, which has a population of less than 1,500, puts up with pretty much 15,000 people for a week. They make a ton of money. And which I find with most of these festivals. But the thing that bothers me about that is the amount of researchers that swallow it, and push it. When the Kecksburg thing happened, there was something in the sky. It was tracked. It was even photographed. Parts of it were found in other states. In Ohio, there was a piece found, and it was a satellite that was coming back into orbit, out of orbit. But you don't hear that. It's more exciting to tell the story of, well, the newest thing was, and this only came out in the last year, that one of the researchers said that he found a witness who was never questioned before, who said that, are you ready for this? While he was standing there looking at it, a little door opened up, and this hand fell out.
The story I heard about it is it turned out it was shaped like the German Nazi bell.
Yep.
And I'm sure you've heard that story before.
Oh yeah.
But we're going to be hitting UFO crashes specifically with conspiracy in December. But I wanted to get your opinion, being as you're in Pennsylvania, you would have more reliable information on that one.
Well, the minute the guy came out with the little door opening up and the hand falling out, That's from the movie, right?
War of the Worlds.
Why did you say the day the Earth stood still, wasn't it?
No, it was
No,
the last.
At
last
the
scene.
end of last scene in War of the Worlds, where the little 3 or 4 fingered hands creeps out of the hatch before it all dramatically slumps. I think the biggest thing we need, the biggest instrument or the most important instrument that we in the paranormal need is a BS detector. we really need to develop a reliable electronic BS detector.
Could you imagine those things that go off at a conference? It would sound like a symphony.
Oh God. Yeah. So real quick, I've got to get back to a question from Don for you, Butch, about the entities, for lack of a better word, that you saw in the barn. Have you considered them to be extraterrestrial?
At this point, I would, yes. But my second,
I would agree. I would agree with the fact that you saw the blue light.
And the second part of that would be that they could be, because of the nature of the area, they could be watchers. Mm-hmm. They're not leaving that barn, and they're not leaving that dirt. And the most tribes in the area that were warring with the Susquehannock during that time period would burn their dead, cremate them. The Susquehannock were the only tribe that would bury their dead like we do today. So have these guys, and this farm's been in the family since day one, have these guys in there digging and building this. Now, there wasn't any disruption when it was a cornfield. Nothing ever happened. But it just seems like everything starts to happen after the cornfield is dug up and this barn is starting to be put up. So, there's 2 things at play here. One is it could be extraterrestrial in nature, and 2, it could be spirit or a doorway or watchers guarding that dirt, land, or it could be a combination of both. Now, I know that's a wide swath to cut, but at this point, that's really all I got. I mean, I can't identify what I'm looking at. And
right, and that makes sense.
So I just keep watching. Now, if the ground goes away, which I don't think it's going to, I think they're just going to move it into another field. But I mean, if the ground goes away and they go away, okay. But now if the ground goes into another field and I scope the field and they're in the field, now talking about something different.
Yeah. Now, is it possible there's it is going to be out in left field outside the box a little, but is it possible there's an underground base there?
No. It's a very rural Amish and Mennonite area. They've been there a long time. But, we do have powwows. And now I don't mean powwows as an Indian. There's actually a religious sect in the Amish community that they powwow. And what they powwow is basically Amish witchcraft. So when you study that a little bit, I mean, again, that's what makes me always think now, never before, but now that all this is connected somehow.
Now, are those the same way? Now, I know the Amish or the Dutch in general have the hex signs they put on barns. Is that the same? Is that the same as the witchcraft you're talking about?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The hex signs are put up to ward off evil.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the barns that have those on or the houses that have those on are not of that sect because, they're trying to keep it away. And the ones that don't have them are, if at all, are the ones that are connected with that sect.
Okay. So Keith, getting to there was you made a comment earlier, and there's a question about what you meant. So the new canine creature that Butch is talking about, you made a comment that it's about time they showed themselves. What were you referring to on that one?
Well, I've been telling people for a while that the ancient races were starting to resurface because of what mankind has been doing, and because of the complications and the atmospheric toxins. Atmospheric being the emotional conflict that's going on. The ancient races are ones that all evolved on the planet, like on Earth here, and are just literally hidden in a different part of the world, quite frankly, for the most part, what people are calling inner Earth. And they are starting to resurface. They're starting to get their bearings, because if mankind doesn't straighten things out in a hurry, the war that mankind keeps trying to wonder when it's going to start, or is it going to be man against man, man hasn't got a prayer of winning it. Because the war won't be human against human. It will be that the ancient races and the planet itself, aka you tsunamis and what have you, is going to end up striking back. And these guys, they're not violent like that. This new wolf, we'll call them lichen for lack of a better term. They're not violent. They are very empathic, which is why you end up with both them and the dogman. But which is why you've got the hunters that can't pull the trigger. It's not mind control per se, so much as emotional influence to stop them from wanting to. Okay.
Sure.
But I'll tell you, I wouldn't recommend pulling a trigger against them anyway. At that size, you're going to need something that's bigger than what most people carry.
Well, I mean, there's no indication that these things are even aggressive, is there? It seems like everybody that's encountered them, it seems that if you don't start any, there won't be any with them.
And
I don't know if that's just because they're so confident of the fact that they could, rip your head off and poop down your windpipe without breaking a sweat, or if they just know you can't harm them.
There is one exception.
It's sort of a combination from what I know.
There is one exception. We had during last hunting season, about this time last year, but I think it was in November or early December. It was deer season, and a gentleman was up in a tree stand on state game land, but that part of state game land he was on is privately owned. And that happens a lot here in Pennsylvania. They all got people that own that land got grandfathered in, so it's their property, but it's still state game land. So people have to abide by those rules. And he was up in his tree stand, and a very high-powered rifle, and a very good scope. And he was scoping out 2 buck at about 300 yards at a tree line. And then they went back into the tree line, and he's looking some more. Well, they came closer in the tree line, so now they're about 200 yards off. And he's watching them through the scope, hoping that they get within a little bit closer. He's been hunting there for 25 years. It's his friend's property. He's the only one allowed on the property. And he sees something. I'll give you his description. He said it was on 2 legs, then it dropped to 4, and it was just standing there staring at the 2 deer, but it was about 50 yards away, behind them. While he's watching it, another one comes out. It also drops to 4 on all 4s, and it's watching the same thing, same deer. One deer proceeds into the woods, and the one creature goes off into the woods after it on all 4s. He describes them as a very large, very muscular, very heavy and long in length wolf. Short ears, definitely a wolf head. He said, but there was something odd about it. Its front legs looked like its back legs, hocked. And he was trying to figure out how it was even walking, even as he was watching it through the scope. Well, as the second one moves out, he's downwind, so it catches him. Next thing you know, he's looking through the scope, and it's walking toward him. It gets about 30 yards out. He's got it dead centered in his scope. It starts to growl at him, show teeth. Here's a guy with a high-powered 30-06 rifle. At 30 yards, he would have obliterated anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he just said, something was in my head just saying, don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't shoot. So he said he kept his gun on it and the scope on it. And it sat there for a few minutes, and then it kind of scruffed a little bit and turned around and walked into the woods. He stayed in that chair on the tree for about an hour and a half before he felt it was safe to come down. He got down, ran to his truck, ran down to the ranger station, which is 7 miles down the road, told them what he saw, and they said, oh, yeah, well, we've had some big dogs running around here, wild dogs. And he said, I want to tell you something. I've been hunting this whole land 25 years. He said, I know a wolf when I see one. I know a dog when I see one. He said it was neither. He said, I don't know what the hell you got running around out there, but let me tell you this. It ain't good. So that was the only one where we had an encounter where the person actually growled at or looked at or even approached.
Okay, now let's talk Bigfoot. So the Bigfoot here in the Pacific Northwest is known to be secretive, docile. I won't say docile, but they won't attack. Whereas you've got the swamp man in the south, where they are. You've got reports of them attacking and whatnot. What's your opinion of that? As far as, are they the same bloodline? Are they the same kind of creature?
My personal opinion on that is I think we're dealing with many creatures that we have no clue yet. When you talk about the swamp ape or you talk about the northwestern Bigfoot as opposed to Bigfoot that are seen in Fayette County here in Pennsylvania, as opposed to Bigfoot that are seen in other parts of the world. I mean, they all have a different characteristic. It's almost like they're not a different breed, but distant cousins or, something like that. And I've read stories over time on Bigfoot where there were attacks, mostly in the Northwest. Usually there were hunters or trappers that were accosted and, killed or disabled or whatever. We have no reports in the state of Pennsylvania of any injuries or anybody ever chased. I mean, as far as we're concerned here in Pennsylvania, they're still the hide-and-seek champions of the world. I mean,
right.
People see them, but they don't see them. They have so many different people out looking for these things. And when I say that, what I'm getting to is, if something is wise to the woods, a deer running through the woods is not going to be a Bigfoot. Somebody that isn't wise to the woods and sees something furry and big run through the woods, it's a Bigfoot. And I think misidentification plays a big part in a lot of the Bigfoot lore. The fact that one of the things that really intrigues me, and I've looked at it many times, is where you have somebody that's using a very good camera. They're very professional in what they're doing. They know how to use that camera, and they'll take a shot, and it might be 50 to 100 feet, and the object they're shooting at in the center of the camera is distorted, but everything around it is crystal clear. I mean, you can see the veins in the leaves when you blow it up, but whatever is in the middle is distorted. So do we have something out there that can, like, tell you not to shoot and also tell your camera, you can get everything but me, This whole genre of cryptozoology is so bizarre in some respects that I could probably put much, much more equipment, like ground sensing equipment, in the truck and stuff like that, and I still wouldn't be any more ahead than I am now.
Hey, Butch?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've dealt with a lot of the Native Americans, and you know some of their lore.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you find a lot of parallel between some of the attributes that are given to Bigfoot and what a Native American shaman is, supposed to be? Doesn't it seem like there's a lot of overlap between those two?
Oh, yeah,
the
absolutely.
abilities of those two?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they never called them Bigfoot. They always called them the big men, the big men of the woods or the guardians of the woods and stuff like that. But
yeah, hairy man or something like that. And down here, they're grass man or skunk ape, swamp booger. There's no Sasquatch or big. That modern, since Bigfoot was termed. But if you're looking, and I'm sure you figured this out, this is more for our listeners than anybody. If you're doing research in the South, you're not going to find anything about Bigfoot before 1950 something. What you're going to find is hairy man, wild man, or Yahoo, or some other reference that doesn't have anything to do with Bigfoot, but it has to do with being big, foul-smelling, and hairy.
Yeah,
and that's where you'll find your archives.
Yeah, and one of the things that I always tell people when they ask questions about Bigfoot or by people or anything else that's in the woods, until you get evidence, you're just telling a good story. And the stories have to stop. It has to be just like in the paranormal and just like in ufology. I mean, you have to gather evidence. You have to show proof that the evidence is good evidence. One of the things that I said to a paranormal guy a little while back when we were talking about the correlation between paranormal, UFOs, cryptos, I said, so you've been doing this for a long time. And the guy, 20 years. And I said, you've seen a lot of stuff. You've recorded a lot of stuff, photographs and sound and stuff like that, a lot of weird stuff. Yeah. I said, so who's outside watching the sky when all this is going on? He just looked at me and said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I said, well, you just said there could be a correlation. So if I was a paranormal researcher, I would have at least one of my team members outside watching the skies and documenting anything strange. So if Joe on the second floor got a door slamming or lights turning off and on in a building that has no electricity, but the guy outside is seeing something hovering above the house or flying over the house or near the house or an orb or a ship or whatever, I said, wouldn't that help put these two together? And he said, we're going to start doing that as of today. And till this day, and that was a few months back, till this day, he still stations somebody outside with a pair of binoculars and a radio.
Mm-hmm.
And I said,
at least he learned.
I said, all you got to do is make sure that who's ever inside, whatever happens inside, is documented. Somebody marks the time. And the guy outside, when he sees something, marks the time. So if at 10:10 at night, he sees something in the skies, and at 10:10 at night, you're hearing noises on the roof, or there's something going on in the basement, or you're getting an EVP reading that you can't explain, doesn't that make you want to think that the two could be combined or could be put together? So,
well, that was one of the things in my presentation at Coop's Paracon is, and Coop and I think Coop, Keith, and Corey all heard the EVP I had captured in my home, and I played it at the thing. Well, there's nothing corroborating the evidence. It's other than, gee, there's my story about how I got this. There's nothing to validate it. It's just a neat collectible is about all it is.
Yeah.
And until the paranormalists and the researchers start doing more about documenting and finding some corollary data, that's all it's ever going to be is campfire stories, modern myths.
Yeah, because, in Pennsylvania, at last count, I think we have like 200 and some odd paranormal groups. And that doesn't count the ones from out of state that come into Pennsylvania, like go to Gettysburg or down to the Eastern Penn or anything like that. So there's a lot. They don't share any information. They don't even talk to each other, just like the ufology groups. Ufology groups share nothing. I mean, you'll get nothing out of MUFON.
No.
You'll get nothing out of any UFO group. That's why when I started mine, I wanted, I have 13 chapters, 2 over in Europe, 1 in England, 1 in Poland, and 11 here in different states. And all the people that are running those branches of UFORCOP in the States are all people that I've worked with in the past. They are researchers. They have equipment. They do go out in the field, and they do document. And that's what I was after. And I might not see it in my time, but hopefully that that kind of mentality will catch on, where you will have groups sharing information like, I'm listening to your group, and your group says, well, we had this, and this happen, and I put it out on my groups and say, hey, this group out in Washington had this happen. Anybody ever heard anything like this? And my guy in Utah or my girl in Utah says, yeah, we had something like that happen 2 years ago. Well, in my mind, the best thing to do there is to get my girl in Utah to contact that person in Washington to share that information. But that's not the way it works. I mean,
no, not even. And that's the sad reality of the paranormal fields today. Everyone wants the credit. Everyone wants their 15 minutes of fame, and to hell with reality, or the evidence.
One of the things that always intrigued me, kind of struck me, as not intrigued, but struck me, was where I know some of these groups for a long time, and all of a sudden not there anymore, and 2 members broke off and they started their own group, and this guy broke off and he started his own group. So now the only thing I see is they waste a lot of money on T-shirts and hats. Okay, so we're a new group, we need new T-shirts, we need new hats. Then they break up. Well, then they got to get new T-shirts and hats. So I'm thinking of opening up a T-shirt and hat factory. I'll make a fortune. I'll make a fortune on these guys.
All right. No, and you bring up a good point, because what I want to hit on is the paranormal entertainment industry. And we've talked about this on Spaced Out Radio. They had me on the show to talk wilderness survival, because being military, that's second nature. But you see these cryptid and mountain, monster shows and whatnot, and they're wearing khaki shorts. They might have a bottle of water and a camera crew and a paramedic. But what the public don't see is, the paramedic and whatnot. So they think, oh, wow, cool, I'm going to go out in the mountains and look for Bigfoot. And they're wearing khaki shorts and a bottle of water. They don't know what the first thing about the dangers of being out in the mountains with sudden weather changes, with, you need to be prepared for
snakes,
whatever.
Snakes. I hate snakes.
Right. But, yeah, and that's the bane of what we do, is you've got every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wants to make a T-shirt and a hat and call himself a paranormal investigator or a cryptid investigator or whatever. And they're not prepared for the first thing, which is battle on search and rescue, battle on families. But, and you've probably seen it being in the law enforcement when you were these people getting lost and whatnot. But
one of the very first things that went into the very first truck that we got was a trauma kit.
Exactly.
You figure you're off the beaten path, you're in the woods, somebody falls, even if they just twist their ankle, or they cut themselves on a branch, or they do get snake bit. You got to be able to take care of that first, or you're going to wind up with somebody that has a real medical emergency that you're not going to be able to handle, and I don't want that in my conscience. So, like I said, we carry everything. We play no games when we're out there, and everything is done pretty meticulously. Everybody knows their job. They know what to do, how to do it, where we're going to set up. Everything is pre-planned. We pre-plan our mapping. We pre-plan where our cameras are going to be, where we're going to be located with the base camp. from where the tent's going to sit to where the canopies are to where the computers are going to be set up to where the generators are running. I mean, everything, including, okay, last thing on the list is, or I shouldn't say last thing, it's actually the first thing on the list is, okay, where are we putting the coffee pot?
Yep.
And that's the way you got to do it. You've got to have some kind of organization. Just running through the woods, banging on trees with sticks, and yelling your lungs out at night with torches is not going to cut it. I'm sorry. I see no sense to that whatsoever. And who in their right mind is going to run through the woods in the dark? That'd be like running. Be like running through a cemetery at midnight. You run into one of those concrete monuments. You ain't getting up. Not right away.
Well, and that's what kills me. Half of them do run through the cemetery at midnight, but that's a whole other topic. I don't get it. But yeah, and part of our training, because we do training every second Sunday of the month, and part of the training we do is protection of the paranormal and the dangers of the paranormal. Because I mean, it doesn't matter which field you're in. With UFO landing sites, you could have radiation. I mean, there's a lot of things that we look at with the dangers of the paranormal. And the cryptid field, I think, is one of the worst because you're dealing with unpredictable terrain, you're dealing with unpredictable weather, you've got to be prepared for whatever comes your way.
There have been people that have been very seriously injured on these paranormal hunts. The one that I can think of right off the top of my head, I believe, was in Oklahoma. I think it might have been Oklahoma, may have been Texas, but a while back, where they went into a haunted house. And the guy was up on the third floor, and he opened the door, and there was no floor. And he broke both legs.
Yeah, I gotta say, did you step?
Yeah, stepped into the room, but there was no floor.
Right.
And just like with the Bigfoot clowns, where you got a guy dressed up in a Bigfoot suit jumps out in the highway out in the middle of Nevada to stop a truck to scare the driver. It only took him about 2 hours to get him out of the grill. I mean, so
wow.
People aren't using their heads. I mean,
no.
You got guys that dress up as Bigfoot and then run around during hunting season. What are you, nuts?
That's asking to get shot because that particular Bigfoot will get hit.
But look, it all comes down to it's good to hear that you guys do training. I mean, I've trained some other groups and done some training sessions with other groups, but that's an oddity that groups ask for training, because usually the groups that get themselves together all know everything. They have it all down pat. They have it all figured out.
And they learn it from TV. They watched the paranormal TV shows, and they went out, and I'm not singling anybody out, but they went out and got the exact same equipment Zach Bagans uses, for example. And now they're going to go ghost hunting. Okay, what are you going to do when you find one? What are you going to do when you get an attachment?
Well, what amazes everybody uses their camera phone. Well, a camera phone's good if you're taking pictures of the baby or the dogs or the damage to your car from an accident. That's great for that stuff. But if you're serious and you're out there and you don't have a good digital camera, you're just blowing smoke, because that lens and that aperture on that. I mean, I have the best Sony you can buy. My wife has one that's even better than this. I mean, 5, 6, 8 megapixel, and that's a lot for a digital camera. But even there, I can see flaws. And then what's even worse is when you download them into a program, like the programs I have to identify UFOs and stuff, the distortion is so bad that it's like, sticking your head in the toilet and opening your eyes to see where the hole is. I mean, it's just the distortion is too great. So, and people say, well, those cameras are too expensive. Well, yeah, they are. Nikon cameras and Canon cameras are very expensive. Panasonics are even worse. We have all of those. We have Sony. We have Canon. We have Nikon. But those were bought over time. They weren't bought all at one time. I couldn't afford that.
No.
And I'm retired now, so I'm glad my equipment buying days are over. But I keep telling my wife that, but they're never really over. But one of the things is that you have a camera, and they're taking pictures of a UFO with a cell phone. Well, that's so high up that when I put it into a computer to look at it, all I see is pixelation. I don't even see a shape. The same thing happens if you're shooting in the woods and you got something that's 100 yards off. You're way out of range for that camera. So,
right.
And you can get these cameras on eBay for cheap. I've seen Nikon D70s and D80s, which are great digital cameras, $50, $75, maybe $100 with a lens. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, that's like the old Canon D60 digital cameras. My God, I mean, I don't think I've paid more than, I got 4 of them, and the image stabilizer lenses go with them. And usually, if I pay $75, that's like a primo that had a really nice lens with it or something, because people are chasing after this year's model, and they ditch last year's model. Yeah. Unfortunately, the Canon T3i, which is the one I want because of that image stabilized 15 to 55 millimeter lens that goes with it, the EFS. Yeah, they haven't come down. They're still $300-400 for one of them.
Well, it's like the Nikon D90 actually came out 5 years ago, and it's still a production model. So to get one of those on the cheap, forget it. You're looking at $1,000 or better. And that's
right. The D60, I don't think they made D60s in probably 2. It's a 6 megapixel camera, so God knows it's probably been 10 years since they made them.
But the 60, the 70 are great cameras, and you can buy them very cheap with a lens. I've seen them for less than $100.
We're coming down to 8 minutes, but I do have a question for you. Have you ever used drones in your mountain operations?
No, because putting a drone up, the only thing I'm going to see is leaves from the top.
Okay. Fair enough.
Now, if I was in an open field situation, yeah. One of the things that we're looking at now that we're thinking about is to get us into the woods in places we can't get in with the truck is a battery-powered bike. Matter of fact, it's built in Washington State. It's called a rad bike.
Okay.
And it will give us 20 to 28 miles on battery, plus you can pedal it if you want to. Mounting some GoPro cameras on it, and a GPS and a radio, and that'll allow us to go into some spaces that we can't get in with the truck, and then put a bag on the back with, stuff to take measurements, footprints, camera, the whole 9 yards. But again, till that's set up, you're looking at $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's lots of things you can try. One of the things, I've been trying to find them, but I can't. The military ground sensors, where something walks across the ground, you can pretty much tell what it is by the weight, and the signal sends back to a laptop. I know where to get them. Area 51 is full of them.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're
and that goes into my next question. What do you see for the future of investigation?
Right now, the UFOs, abductions, they're probably level as they were the last 2 years. Abductions were up about 10% 2 years ago. They kind of steadied. Crypto sightings are ongoing with us. I mean, because we have such a wide area. We have the whole center of the state from the south to the north. There's like 12 counties that we're working in. So that takes up a lot of time. And the summertime is useless because of the leaves. You don't see nothing. So we got to really wait till October, November, December, those months. And then we have conferences that we speak at, and that kind of stuff, and training, and new equipment testing and stuff like that. But we got a full plate, and I'm thankful for it. I mean, I could be sitting here doing nothing, but I'm sitting here surrounded by 7 computers, and they're all working. So I guess stuff's happening.
Yeah, right. Wow. So we're coming down to about 3 minutes, and how can people find you, Butch?
They can find me at our website, which is uforcop.com, UFORCOP.com. on that site, you'll see terrestrial contact. Just go there, fill it out. That comes right to my mail, and then I can contact it. If they leave me a contact or an email, I get right back to them. On Facebook, U4COP, Facebook, and Facebook, UFO Research Center, Pennsylvania. JAR Magazine, which is also on Facebook, JAAR, is our abduction site. And so, I mean, getting a hold of me is really not a problem. And even if it doesn't mean that they need to get a hold of me for a report, even if they just want information on a piece of equipment, where to buy or what to get, or if they have a question, or even if they have samples that got to go to a lab, our lab does our stuff for free. Our photo lab is right here in my house, so I can look at any photograph and pretty much do anything I want with it. I can find a hoax photograph in a matter of 10 minutes. If they hoaxed it, I'll find it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we're open to helping anybody. I don't care who it is. I mean, until they stick it to you, then you just help them out.
Right. Sounds good. And our next training, folks, is November 12th at Annie's Pizza here locally in Concrete, Washington, and it's going to be on paranormal protection, grounding and shielding, and stones and herbs used in protection. And we have some other events we're working on that may kick off this month. And outstanding show. Thank you, Butch, for being on. Thank you, Keith, for being on. Thank you, Marco, for being on. And Corey, go ahead and take us home.
All right. Well, that being said there, I would like to thank our panel of guests, Butch Witkowski of the UFO Cop, our Keith Andrews from the ET Connection, and Eric Markham, our Forest Moon Paranormal resident scientist. Join us next Saturday at midnight as we have our monthly S4 Roundtable, where our panel will bring questions to the table about all the aspects of the paranormal. You can find us on Spreaker.com, SpacedOutRadio.com, and now on the KTLK The Fringe FM. I want to thank all of our listeners, because without you guys, there is no S4. Thank you very much for joining us. Good night, everybody, and remember, keep your eyes to the skies.